Nilaji, you tell me when to go.
Yeah, please, we can start. Yeah, over to you, Arena.
Hello to everyone joining us from all over the world, and welcome to this session for the World Water Week. For the next 80 minutes, we're going to be exploring the critical topic of how to upscale nature-based solutions for water security and climate change adaptation. We're going to be questioning a panel of leading experts on the topic, as well as hearing presentations from this event's co-conveners, who are the Asian Disaster Preparedness Center, the Asian Institute of Technology, and the International Union for the Conservation of Nature and the Asia Regional Office. So please do submit your questions to the panelists through the online chat, as we'll have a 10-minute Q&A at the end of the session. And finally, we also have 3 poll questions for all of you listening. So please do give us your thoughts. You can do that online next to the chat tab. So let's get started. I'm just going to quickly share my screen. Can you see that?
Yes, yes.
Fantastic. So the world is currently being rocked by a series of droughts across multiple regions, stretching from China to the US and Europe, the worst in 500 years. It's a stark reminder that climate change is here, but also of how precious our water supply is to everything we do. Climate change will wreak havoc to our global water cycle as more droughts, but also floods, landslides, cyclones tear across different regions. But we do have solutions to dampen the impact. Oh, sorry, I can't change my slides. And we do have solutions that are based on nature. So we've got examples like forest landscape restoration, ecosystem-based adaptation, mangroves to protect coastlines, and these are all concrete and tested solutions that can help manage the water cycle and build resilience to water-related hazards. And AXA Climate, just to give you some examples from our from my organization, we're supporting nature-based solutions by designing insurance, as one example, to protect mangroves and coral reefs from hurricane and coral bleaching. And we're also advising our clients on adaptation measures by prioritizing natural solutions over grey, or as a complementary, because they are more cost-effective and have multiple other benefits like improving biodiversity, capturing carbon, etc. We're trying to make the argument more powerful and more tangible by quantifying the reduction of disaster risk thanks to nature, and also quantifying how much it actually costs to establish and maintain. Then comparing this to traditional approaches so that there's a clear numbers-based approach to make a decision on what to finance. So in today's session, we're going to be focused specifically on South Asia, where water resources are especially sensitive to climate change. And we're going to understand what nature-based solutions have been used already and how to scale these up. And we'll look at the key levers of financing, policy, capacity, and knowledge, and how these can be really pulled to make an impact. With that, I'm going to move to introducing our esteemed panelists. Stop sharing my screen here. Sorry, one moment. So firstly, we have, in no particular order, Hans Gutman, who is Executive Director from the Asian Disaster Preparedness Center, Thailand. Thanks for being with us, Hans. He has over 25 years of policy and development experience, specifically in rural development, water resources management, environment management, water diplomacy, and international cooperation. We also have Dr. Mahua Mukherjee, who's professor at the Department of Architecture and Planning and the Center of Excellence in Disaster Mitigation and Management for the Indian Institute of Technology, Roorkee. Hello, Doctor. She is also Secretary General to the South Asian Alliance of Disaster Research Institutes, and her research interest includes sustainable urban development, risk resilience, including urban climate and climate responsive campus and housing design. Next, we have Dr. Masood Arshad, who is Senior Director for Footprint at the WWF in Pakistan. And he also has 25 years of wide-ranging experience in environmental conservation, planning, development, project management, and research in natural resource management in Pakistan. And last but not least, we have Dr. Mukhlisur Rahman, Executive Director for the Center for Natural Resource Studies in Bangladesh. Thank you so much to all of you for being with us today. Before we start questioning our esteemed panelists, we're going to kickstart with a presentation by Dr. Niladri Gupta, who is Senior Water Resource Management Specialist from the ADPC. And he's going to give us a quick science lesson on how nature-based solutions can really manage water cycle disruption. Over to you, Dr. Gupta.
Thank you, Karina. Let me, see my screen. Thank you and good morning. Good morning, everybody. So to start with, the topic of today is how nature-based solution in water sector actually helps to manage the disruption in the water cycle that is being caused by climate change. Because when we talk of climate change, the major issue is the change in the water cycle. But before we go into that, what do we mean by nature-based solution? Though many of you already know about this, but still the definition that IUCN actually defines nature-based solution as an action to protect, sustainably manage and restore natural or modified ecosystem that address societal challenges effectively and adaptively. So it's not only about protecting the current environment, but also manage and restore the natural or modified ecosystems. And when we go into thinking in this line, and the first thing comes in our mind is when we talk of water resources, anywhere in the globe, it's the water cycle, and that is being disrupted. So there is a significant and growing body of scientific evidence which documents that climate change will intensify the risks of water-related hazards. And as the lower atmosphere becomes warmer, climate change is altering the water cycle through an increase in evaporation, evapotranspiration, and precipitation, and changes to atmospheric circulation. This is leading to wet regions becoming wetter, while dry regions becoming drier. So which will lead to reduction in the decrease in the snowpacks and glaciers. Decrease in snowfall will lead to proportional increase in rainfall. There will be reduction in runoff, increased droughts in the drier region, where there will be increased evaporation and increase in water temperature over time, which will lead to increase in rainfall and heavy precipitation events, leading to flooding and more sediments coming with the runoff. And this will have a knock-on effect on the entire water cycle. Now, to reduce the exposure to the water-related risks, countries have made significant investment in grey infrastructure, we know, because when we talk of climate change-induced water-related risks, the first that comes in our mind is coastal flooding and erosion, which is the ecosystem degradation through overexploitation of natural resources and destruction of coastal habitats. The next comes river flooding. Climate change is expected to increase the river flood risks, which we are seeing. It's no more expected, it's happening. Then there is urban flooding. As urban population grows and climate change shifts rainfall pattern, communities are increasingly at risk of urban flooding. And we have seen these in the recent past, like the situation in Germany last year, the urban flooding that happened, and then in China, and recently in South Korea a few weeks back. And then comes the drier region becoming more dry. The frequency, intensity, and duration of droughts have been steadily increasing in recent years. But what we have seen is that to reduce the exposure to these water-related risks, countries have made significant investment in grey infrastructures like dikes or dams. They have provided protection, no doubt about it, and other vital services on which human life depends, such as regulating water supply and generating hydropower in case of dams. they equally have limitations, this grey infrastructure, because one thing is that they are long lasting and inflexible. The important part is they're inflexible. And in the past has been designed assuming that a static hydroclimatic condition. But as we see, the hydroclimatic condition is no more static. So the high cost of adapting inflexible grey investment can lead to vulnerability of failure under changing climate conditions, especially in uncertain future due to climate change. So like coastal defenses have becoming, there's an example, like coastal defenses becoming increasingly expensive to adapt to raising sea level and to maintain it over time. And then grey infrastructure can also undermine the ability of natural systems to regenerate. So that's where NBS comes as an alternate solution in some cases and supporting solutions in some other cases. So if we see the entire physiography of a region starting from the mountains to the sea, actually NBS can be applied at all levels, starting from conserving and protecting water resources like the glacial areas, establishing flood bypasses to reduce downstream flooding, then growing crops across slopes to reduce the erosion or increase infiltration. And it can also lead to connecting rivers to floodplains and leading to aquifer recharge, water harvesting, purifying wastewater, and protecting and restoring reefs for coastal protection and habitats. So whatever paradigm you can think of, everywhere nature-based solution can be applied. But whether it can be applied as an alternate solution, standalone solution, or as a supporting solution, that varies from situation to situation. So there is increasing evidence on the performance of the nature-based solution to reduce water-related risks, highlighting features which make NBS particularly well-suited for adapting to changing climate conditions, particularly for adaptation. Now, NBS actually, how do we evaluate the performance of NBS to reduce water-related risk? It can actually assist in managing uncertainty related to climate change, allowing for flexibility to adapt to changing circumstances. It can also be considered as a no-regret solution. So NBS can yield benefits even in the absence of climate change, making them an effective way to cope with climate variability and change. So as for example, suppose say a floodplain may attenuate larger flood volumes than can be held within a levee line river channel, with co-benefits of sustaining bird and fish species, or even mangroves can keep pace with moderately high rate of sea level rise. Then NBS can increase the effectiveness and operable life of grey infrastructure. Like if we give a hybrid solution, then actually it can lead to more afterlife of a grey infrastructure, like integrating NBS into grey flood control measures to increase water absorption capacity, reduce the velocity of the water, and regulate peak flows. And NBS can also be used to protect regions from risks posed by drought by increasing and maximizing the water storage capacities, slowing the release of water, or even recharging the groundwater. But when we talk of all these solutions, the first thing that comes is what is the economics behind it? So I will give a brief about the economic argument of NBS, because we see that upscaling NBS has now become a priority, but are the finances available? Is there an economic argument to it? So there is growing evidence of the economic benefits of maintaining natural habitats through avoided losses to water-related disasters. So it's like, it is seen as that if it was a disaster which can be minimized, then there are some losses which can be avoided. That's where the economic argument comes in. It's not that it will stop a flood. That NBS can be more cost-effective than grey alternatives, and in particularly for less extreme hazards. So when we are thinking of slow onset events like sea level rise, then NBS become a most cost-effective alternative. Then investment in NBS can stimulate the economy by creating jobs, much the same way as investment in grey infrastructure. But we have to have confidence that that solution will work. So that's why we say that it's either an alternate to the grey infrastructure or as a support, as a hybrid solution. So with this background, I think we can go over to the discussion, and thank you very much. Over to you, Karina.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gupta, for setting the scene and giving us the basics and giving tangible examples of what exactly we mean by nature-based solutions in the context of water. Dr. Rahman, I'm going to turn to you for our first question. What role do you think nature-based solutions can and should play in addressing the global water crisis.
Thank you, Karina. I think the presentations made by the speaker is actually explain how nature-based solutions has its positionality in addressing the water-related issues in this age of Anthropocene. I just like to highlight some of the activities that are done in Bangladesh. We, in practice, what we call the nature-based solutions, meaning the ecosystem restorations or ecosystem management enhancement. Over the last 20 years, we have been practicing the restoration of streams and wetlands. Particularly these streams and wetlands were affected by anthropogenic use, sedimentations, and other forms of agricultural aggressions, this and that. I mean, to create more water, particularly in the dry season, so that the fish population can and the aquatic biota can get their safe refuge. And at the same time, farmers can also use water for dry season farming. And it is simply by restoration of ecosystems, the wetlands, the streams. In the Rohingya camp area, we have been working over the last 4 years because you know that it is degraded due to settlement. It was a reserve forest area and lots of streams were there and forest cover, but all are clear. Streams were narrowed down and segmented, converted. So where we actually, with the Rohingya communities and host communities, we restored the stream networks. We call it, say, blue infrastructure. And along the streams, we planting trees, herbs, and shrubs to recreate the forest ecosystem, which we call the green infrastructure. So it is, and both are adopting kind of nature-based approaches. And also we created water reservoirs because it is the hilly areas and then water drained out to there is huge rainfall, but quickly drain out to the river system and the Bay of Bengal. So water reservoirs created options for storing water for the dry season use and also infiltration and use by the diverse use of waters for the Rohingya communities. Another important thing is conservation agriculture, because water distress, there is huge water distress, I think, across the countries in the South Asia and across the world. So we need to think about changing the farming systems. The winter crop, particularly the winter rice, needs huge amount of irrigation water. But if we do crop diversifications and cash crops, then other non-rice crops, then the farmers can harvest it before the flash flood or flood comes, and also can get a good economic return with a kind of safer type of farming system that's we demonstrated in the northeastern deeply flooded Howard Basin, where flash flood is a big problem. Likewise, mangrove in the coastal area, we also did mangrove restoration in the riverside lands. Otherwise, these lands are being grabbed by the rich shrimp farmers, which is not enabling for the communities and environment. So there, the mangroves we planted and adopted a kind of assisted natural regeneration, because seeds coming from the nearby Sundarbans and they grow, but needs kind of protection and community engagement. And now these are big in size and then kind of providing ecosystem services in terms of fish availability, shrimps, crabs, and fruits and fuel from the mangroves. So these are all basically nature-based solution approaches. There are also inventions by the agriculture research institutions on kind of stress-tolerant varieties of crops. However, so these are in practice in Bangladesh, and where we were also involved in it. I just like to highlight that NBS cannot solve every problems. Like, you know, the sea level rise, if it goes at a very high level, what we can do. So that's why we actually, when we plan for a place, then we talk about the continuum of NBS. Start from the green where it is possible, and then green-gray approach, and then gray-green approach, and finally, maybe we need gray approach in some places. So that's one thing that we need to consider. Now I'd like to talk about the scale. I think that it is better to do it in a small scale. We call it village landscape. That's why we tested in the coastal area and other parts of the country. And then we can go for the next level, which is the landscape scale. And then sub watershed, and then watershed, larger watershed, and finally very large watershed, which is transboundary in nature. For example, the Meghna River basin, if we want to manage, then we need a transboundary consensus and cooperation and a kind of joint planning. Because, being the downstream country, the riparian country, we're receiving water with lots of sediments, and it is largely due to the change of land use pattern in the upstream. So we need a kind of joint approach, a joint management, not only to conserve water, but also the production systems, food production, fisheries, biodiversity, and forest ecosystems. So these are linked. So we need to actually think about that. The other aspect is important in the NBS, that we need to consider the nexus approach. So like the water is not simply water. We need to think about availability of water and also rational use of water by different sectors. And there is a need for a kind of nexus approach so that the water, food, energy, environment, or biodiversity, climate change can be integrated. Obviously, there is high potential because the small scale testing of NBS has very good results and encouraging results. It addresses the societal challenges due to climate change and other non-climatic drivers. So the question is, if we upscale from the village to landscape to water, sub-watershed to watershed, and at the transboundary scale, definitely it would benefit and help us face the challenge of the climate change in future. So I like to stop here, but well, I'm available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Raman. So in a nutshell, I think you packed in a lot of ideas there, but you're basically saying use nature-based solutions where possible. You've given us lots of great examples in Bangladesh. You're saying that sometimes NBS can't solve the issues. So we have to opt for grey or some kind of combination. And you've said, go small first and test, and then go up to the watershed transboundary projects and look at the nexus approach. Thank you so much for this. I'm going to now focus again on the South Asia region, obviously, which is very pertinent to the panelists here, which obviously is very subject to droughts and flooding. I'm going to give the next question to Dr. Arshad from WWF. Why, Dr. Arshad, is scaling up NBS in the water sector really critical for the South Asia region specifically?
Thank you, Ms. Karina. And I think, first of all, I would like to thank you for letting me into this program. I think when we talk about the water sector, and especially from Pakistan's perspective and also from South Asia perspective, I think the first thing that I would like to say is for us, climate change is water change. So it's basically as a result of these climate change impacts, we are facing these water challenges in the South Asia. And South Asia is similar to a frontline barrier in the context of the global climate crisis, you can say. The altered weather patterns manifesting in hotter summers, unpredicted rains, sudden droughts, and longer monsoons are increasing the vulnerability of this region for sure. So similarly, the risk associated with these climate change-led disasters are increasing, also increasing each day as urban population in South Asia grows continuously. The water sector specifically is very highly sensitive to climate change, which results in disasters such as flood, droughts, and cyclones. And especially in the context of Pakistan right now, if you see, look at the rainfall is doing to Pakistan. So you can see almost half of the Pakistan is under flood now, right now. So our crime is very minimum, And our crime is very minimum, but our punishment is very severe. So you can see, because when we talk about the Pakistan, so we are on number 132nd in terms of in producing greenhouse gas emissions. But when it comes to vulnerability, we are almost in the top 10 countries of the world. So this is how, because we are producing even less than 1% of the greenhouse gas emissions globally per capita. But on the other hand, on the top 10 countries all the time, starting from 2010 to till now. So this is what is happening. I think it's not only the gray infrastructure that can resolve our issue. I think water conservation in any case has to be done by us. It is the gray infrastructures are not the only solutions in these countries. So what we feel that as a result of this, even reach out Pakistan, the one we are developing right now, and I think we're all done to submit this to the GCF now. I think this program is all about nature-based solution, ecosystem-based adaptation project. And I was attending in one of the IUCN global standard training right now, previously third training. And what we placed our reach out Pakistan into the global NBS framework. So I think 86% of it was adhered to the offers all the components. So I think I think it is very important for us to go on for this for nature-based social ecosystem-based adaptation, as previously indicated by previous speaker. So because it's not only EBA, it's EBA plus infrastructure, and infrastructure and plus you can also include the grey infrastructure. But I think grey infrastructure has already been taken care of the government at the highest level. I think our job is to let's demonstrate the NBS, let's demonstrate the EBA into our work, and EBA at a scale so that we can show the impact at the landscape level, starting from the village level to the landscape level and to the watershed and to the transboundary. I think that's very likely, as I said by that. So I think water conservation through ecosystem-based adaptation and green infrastructure, I think makes a perfect sense for this country, but for countries like Pakistan and countries for South Asian countries. I think this is important. And scaling up of these solutions is also important to accelerate a climate smart transition. So many scientific organizations, including WWF, are working on adoption and promotion of this NBS. And this success has been already demonstrated through various projects and initiatives. So I think this is also important that we need to learn. So government should support in this context is also an imperative, of course. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Arshad. So reiterating the fact that, grey has been maybe a little bit done already. We should be prioritizing the green where possible, and how important it is for the climate smart transition. So we've heard now how nature-based solutions can be used and should be used globally and in South Asia in managing the current and the future water disruptions and why it's so critical. We're now going to hear from Dr. Indrajit Pal, Associate Professor from the Asian Institute of Technology, who will show some rather shocking case studies, including drying deltas and shifting rivers, and who will make a strong case for collaboration and knowledge sharing across borders. Over to you, Dr. Pal. I think you're on mute.
Is it okay?
Perfect. And you can just put your screen on full.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Is that fine?
Great.
Okay, thank you so much. So first of all, I'd like to thank all the partners and also organizing this interesting and very meaningful event actually at this point in time. So our since we're a research organization, an academic institution. So the theme I'll be covering the need for research and knowledge sharing opportunity to understand actually the facts, where are the gaps, where we can feed in, and which part need more research. And few case studies will be helpful to understand the context. So I'll directly go into the subject area and try to understand through the case studies like how and what we can do in terms of research community and as a practitioners as well. So we know like there are many activities going on in terms of NBS approach. So innovative new technologies might also join this process. So in NBS is nothing new, just started now. So it is practicing for many years. I think we need some specific approach to also to understand why NBS is not taking up in that level in some places. What are the gaps? Why community or the decision makers are not taking too much of interest in some places? So we need to find out few policy related issues and also few physical issues as well. So we know the value of water for the nature and climate change already very much well discussed. And water crisis actually is the theme to be discussed, like how we can really understand the problems of the water crisis and also to address that through the NBS approach. If we see few of the things in AIR 5, IPCC report, annual report 5, so it also talks about the recharge of the groundwater and also like how it is actually impacting and how NBS also can help in this this context to recharge process and other processes also. There are a few areas also maybe covered in the IPCC 5, AIR 5. If we remember Dr. Niladji's presentation about the global water cycle, this is also well explained in IPCC report, like in the global monsoon precipitation is very much impacted by the global warming, and the variability and also extreme climate events are also changing or increasing. So there is a severe need for a research and knowledge sharing through the various aspects to address that climate change and water security issues. One of the example, like one first scenario I'd like to mention here about Ganga Brahmaputra Meghna river delta. It's a very huge delta spread across two countries, Bangladesh and India. This is one of the most dynamic delta in the world. It's about 25,000 square kilometers. And one of the climate hotspot is natural stressors are many. So as per the geographic location, this is also one of the fringe part of Bay of Bengal and very much prone for the cyclonic storm surge, and various other hazards like saltwater intrusion and erosions like this. Apart from that, development pressure also creating like anthropogenic stressor. So that stressor also one of the combining with the natural one, I think the vulnerability as a whole is increasing a lot. So if you see both the picture here, 1990 and 2020, it's about 30 years. So there are a few red lines on the right side picture in 2020. What we have to try to map here is in 30 years, there is a huge amount of canal which is dead for various reasons. It could be anthropogenic, and there are some cases also is natural. So the length is very long. So this research is actually undergoing right now under one of the GCRF project called Living Delta Hub. There we are trying to understand like what are the different causes for drying up that dead canals, and how naturally it can be impacted and what can be done to revive that naturally. This is also another one, like we can understand the density of the drainage system across for last 30 years. Second scenario is interesting one. Dr. Rahman mentioned about that, like how agriculture can be helpful, or agriculture can also be supportive in various forms, like diversification of the crops and other type of diversification. The first one is conservation of agriculture and sweetwater ponds is one of the area what we can look into. So we have seen like rapid expansion of the aquaculture is also one of the area where like water stress is going on, increasing in some of the delta areas. So we have tried to map the delta areas because it's a in this case we are trying to do that case studies. There's a growing concern about the expansion of the aquaculture at the cost of the well-being of delta dwellers. So there is a key question, like why that expansion is going on, like whether we livelihood is important in that context, or the land conversion is important, which one we need to look into. So there's a continued debate on that at the local level even. So these are the few examples from the field, like aqua ponds in Sundarban areas in Indian part of Sundarban. So there is a huge land conversion from the agricultural land to the aquaculture land. Third scenario is talking about the river bank erosion. The river bank erosion, we have tried to map about 100 kilometer from kilometer river length from the river mouth towards the upstream, and the surprisingly the figure we have mapped is like for last 30 years of erosion. There are few streams already abundant, and there are few streams are getting very, very low amount of water. So it's extremely impacting the local agricultural aspect. So these are the few areas maybe we can improve, like mangrove could be one of the natural defense system. If you see the left side picture here, the degraded mangrove. So these are the frontline actually warrior. And the mangroves, we can see like that the front line is actually degraded over the time, 20-30 years. And this is one of the area where we really need to be stressed out. So so that NBS could be one of the solution, as I also fully agree, like NBS is not only solution, but one of the solution could be NBS. So my last slide here, a few strategic recommendation after through this research. Like research and development should be prioritized at the government level to feed into the policy. And then transboundary collaboration is also required, like the way right now we are doing this research with Bangladesh and India jointly. Sharing of related data is also another challenge. We can also promote a few regional energy trade-off and also pave the way for the regional cooperation on the water, hydropower, and risk mitigation. And there are a few other things also we can consider about the investment mechanism. Niladri partially mentioned that. And the last point is like leveraging academic and scientific diplomacy to reinforce the water risk management and water security. Thank you so much. I'll stop here. And I'm really thankful also GCRF and Living Delta Hub to support this research and as well as this session from AIT side. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pell. And now we're just going to pass back to the panelists. Dr. Mukherjee, we've just seen some very alarming examples of changes in the water sector, but let's focus on the solutions. What are your thoughts on how disruptive technologies can support an upscaling nature-based solutions in the water sector?
Thank you, Karina, for this wonderful question. And I think really we need to go for the solution side as well. And the solution, and especially the disruptive solution, the innovative solutions, we may find in policies, we may find in planning, design, and definitely technologies. And the technology can be socially oriented, it can be purely for the sake of scientists and engineers. So there are so many different things are happening. It's not that people are waiting. And nature-based solution, as rightly pointed out by the speakers, that it is already there. And now, as the pressure is increasing, we are trying to bring our solution to match that pressure, probably with our new technologies. So for this, I would like to really bring three pillars. I suggest it in the form of mediation, M, E, and D, monitoring, evaluation, and design ideation. So if we go for the mediation, monitoring means my lab actually has worked with UN Office of Outer Space expert, and we have been able to develop on GIS platform the monitoring tool, GeoSem-NATI tool, geospatial monitoring of natural elements. And water is one of the major natural elements which is under our scanner. And there we have tried to take advantage of today's access to Earth observation data. And this helps us to identify the stresses, and also because the urban risk is not only on water, it is also having the heat and other issues. And in addition to that, we have been also able to identify where the interventions should happen. And the scale is city to city level to the this very much the core area level, neighborhood level. And similar things are happening. We can actually monitor the hydrology, size, how it is changing, vegetation. Those are the things we can change. We can check health, we can check of these water bodies. And similar things are also being done in different scale, like UNEP has worked on opportunity mapping. That is at the regional scale. And that is again another very wonderful tool. Most importantly, which I would like to really bring under monitoring, the startup companies are coming. And that shows that it is going to really upscale, because upscaling and NBS also requires this economic angle being very strong. So we could see the startups are coming with, let's say, LiDAR system, then this unmanned vehicles, a drone system they're using, automated vessels, real-time data, IoT sensors. Those are the things that are really in place, and the professional services for these water elements are now being available in different portals. But for the regional focus, I would like to say, definitely Asia Pacific region requires more and more of this type of interventions, which probably should grow also from these regions, so that the regional characters can get more highlighted. So that is for the monitoring part. Evaluation, again, I will say it's nothing new. You not only value the water, you also go for the valuation of the water. What is actually going to help, not only in economic terms, but also in environmental terms. Like we can go in the tons of carbon, biophysical term. We can also go in a very different way, like net present worth, which also works wonder. And we have seen that many different type of software also has come. A very interesting one, Invest, which was developed from Stanford. Yeah, Stanford, they brought it. And now almost every GIS platform can use it as a plugin to understand this ecosystem service of a water element and its monitoring and its design as well. So startups are there for carbon trading, for investment, based on all these type of evaluation. So again, the startups are very much there for this NBS to be judged. The last and the final point, that MED, monitoring, evaluation, and design ideation. Here I would like to talk about that any nature-based solution always has shown the strength on the basis of the networking. So this predictive modeling and simulations, they are coming in to adjust these networking alternatives. If we talk about, again, the South Asia in specific, we really probably don't have opportunity for having new water elements, but we need to really work on the recreation, restoration, reconstruction and restoration. So there, this design ideation really works wonder. And before actually going to the field, all these simulation tools can help us a lot to understand what different type of benefits we are getting. So that is really important. And before stopping, I would again like to bring some startup examples in the design phase. Like in Kerala, we have seen the very typical palm coir mats are being now produced professionally from the business side, which is being used for the bank lining, canal bank lining. And that is a wonderful example, because these are all natural materials used for the natural elements bank protection, which can really gel so well. Another wonderful example I would like to bring, especially it is so much valid in the East Asia and also in South Asia, the water-based communities who are on float. The toilets, wonderful toilet facilities are coming up again from the design side. And these are very much required to protect our water quality. So, and I would like to really stop. Before that, I would like to highlight the policy intervention as well. Like highways are wonderful opportunities where we can say that gray and NBS can work together. And in India, we have seen the green highway policy has come up. So we have to really make sure that they really have a proper, implementation as well, not only on paper. These policy interventions need to really be implemented. With that, I would like to stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mukherjee. So just as to recapture the main ideas, you've got 3 pillars. You're looking at monitoring, evaluation and design. You're seeing lots of startups coming up in the monitoring using geospatial platforms to really understand what the stresses are for the water cycle. You're also looking at evaluation. You mentioned the Stanford tool that can be plugged into GIS platforms to actually really evaluate the economic value of water. And then lastly, using simulation tools to really understand what the benefits of restoration can be. Thank you very much. I'm going to pass to Mr. Gutman. From your experience at the ADPC, what do you think is needed to strategically integrate nature-based solutions in the decision-making on disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation decision-making? And how can this be done so that it also contributes to building climate resilient communities?
Thank you. And thank you to everybody participating here and our co-convening partners. I think starting out, we need clear cases, as have been said earlier, also of demonstrating how and that nature-based solution works, and specifically how it works, and what are the benefits, and how these, and contextualize these benefits. And pilots were mentioned, and I think that's a good start, but success tends to build on success. So as we move forward and see scaled up solutions, these ones needs to be promoted to see that things can work at scale also, and that these benefits do accrue as intended. And I think you, Karina, you mentioned in the beginning the need to quantify benefits and show how the benefits accrues to implementers and promoters. And I think that's a critical aspect. And I think what we often face is there's a gap between this sort of understanding of things and application, and finding concrete answers to the broader issues of what's in it for me as a manager, as a promoter, or whatever, individually and institutionally. How do we benefit from this? Is it better projects? Is it better economic return? Do we, with our projects implementing these solutions, have greater ability to reach our social, environmental, and economic objectives? I also think in order to make the needle move on these issues, it's important to target and affect the financial sources, working with not just the implementers, but also ministries of finance and other banks and others, to give the reasons to fund this, to make funds available. But that's not enough. It also needs to, at the highest level possible, I think, be in the planning and setting out clearly what will the goals and expectations be on this. I think another note is important in this context, and we can elaborate on how to do it, but there was a mentioning in terms of some of these solutions are based on conservation, on issues of how to maintain systems. And I think there is a difficulty in some areas with the sort of perceived no investment option, the conservation, which can be difficult to justify or convince people to apply and use it, because we are traditionally looking for an investment and then the resultant benefits from that investment. But I think here the messaging needs to be done that nature-based solutions can be used in these areas by the sort of approach of conservation and maintaining, perhaps of mangroves or coastlines and stuff. And I think we need to learn from the experience, and I think IUCN and WWF have some good experience in those areas about how to promote conservation and maintenance of systems as investments. We can go on further, but I'm mindful of the time for the moment, so I'll leave it there and have some more interventions later. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Arshad, what are your views on this point?
You're talking about specific reference to technologies and.
No, sorry, it's more about how we how we strategically integrate nature-based solutions in the decision making around disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation decision making.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think whatever we already have in Pakistan, especially in the South Asia, I think the first and foremost the question that arises in our mind is that how we can develop the evidence-based things. Because first you need to implement some of the interventions at the field level, learn some lessons out of that, how effective they are, and what we can get out of them. So multiple demonstration projects have already provided some scientific evidence on the successes of these nature-based solutions. So I think there's also a growing recognition on the potential of these solutions, especially when you talk about the donor community. So you can see that every other donor in this sector are just trying to provide funding for softer solutions and greener solutions rather than the hard infrastructure solution. So I think it is important for us to understand that if there is a sensitization at that level. So I think it is important for us to understand as well, because we have already we've already initiated some of the interventions at the field level. So I think the evidence that is coming out of those fields has already sensitized the donor communities, also sensitized the governmental policymakers to integrate those interventions, our successes, our lessons learned into the planning processes. So the increasing, you can see the increasing frequency of even the climate disasters has pushed stakeholders to understand and recognize the need for NBS, which will help in their adoption and upscaling. It will not only help from the interventions perspective, but also what we feel there are a lot of other opportunities exist in this sector, that is like even the potential of green jobs within the sector. I think if you think from that perspective, even it is from the cost-effective perspective, you can see there are a lot of environmental cost savings that we can get out of this the thing. And then, of course, international reputation as innovative and proactive country against climate change from Pakistan's perspective, as we are implementing glacial lake outburst flooding project. We are also implementing climate smart agriculture through FAO, and we're also implementing Reach Out Pakistan from WWF perspective, and then the resilient Asian Delta. So it means that we're covering the entire Pakistan, entire Indus River, right from the northern region to southern area. I think the nature-based solutions have been in the top in our planning agenda. So we produced the evidences. So it was then it went up to the decision makers and policy level. So I think that was the key point. When you produce the evidence, you ask them to implement, and then they got it into their business. So I think this is very important for me. And yeah, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Arshad. We're going to have to hurry a little bit. We're going to now listen to Mr. Vishnu Rajan Sinha, Program Officer for Water and Wetlands for South Asia from the IUCN Asia Regional Office for our final presentation. And he's going to be sharing some concrete case studies to show what has worked in the region.
You are on mute.
Bishra, we can't hear you.
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
And you can see my presentation?
Yeah, full screen mode.
Yeah.
Is it okay now? Yeah. So thank you very much. And I'm really delighted to be here and sharing some of the experiences that local community and governments have in implementing nature-based solution in the Meghna River Basin. So it's a basin which is shared by, I'm sorry, I cannot see the messages or any questions from the participants, so please let me know in between if I have to stop. So this is a basin which is located, is actually shared by India and Bangladesh, a very small portion in Myanmar. And one of the important, characteristic feature of this basin is a lot of indigenous people, richness of biodiversity, and people's dependence on the primary sector. So I will be just sharing very quickly 2 to 3 case studies and actually what results it led to. So it gives us some ideas of how nature-based solutions work. So here is a definition of nature-based solution already discussed by Dr. Niladri. So here are 2 things: actions to protect ecosystem and also how it can solve some kind of a human or societal challenge. So these are the 2 aspects of nature-based solution. And there is always, a lot of discussion around what actually nature-based solution will be in practice. To help that, IUCN has designed some criterias and a lot of indicators to help practitioners in designing and verification of nature-based initiative. Here you see first criteria is about addressing societal challenges, a starting point. Then, thinking about not just the specific site, but how it can work at a scale. 3, 4, 5 that you see in the screen are located to sustainable development goals. And then it is important to also understand trade-offs between the achievements, which how it is like, maybe because every intervention that we plan benefits some people and might be having some negative impact on some other stakeholder. Then NBS is like an evolving process. It needs to be adaptively managed through the time, implementing solutions under change. And then we need to, upscale it to the appropriate jurisdictional country. So there are indicators linked to it, and it is available online. Everyone can go and use this tool for help in designing their case studies. So very quickly, so from the Meghna River Basin, I would like to showcase this story about how communities are helping endangered marshal species in the Simsang and Mindu River Basin. So not a very big technological interventions here, a community-led effort because the marshal population was declining. So local community actually started protecting some sites from the rivers, creating sanctuaries. Currently, there are more than 100 sanctuaries, and these are all protected and managed through cultural governance practices or institutions of the communities. Now there are more than 100 such sites across all of the Meghalaya, and it has come to the notice of the governments and CSOs, and now governments are kind of supporting some sites through creation of additional income. And the results currently is that there is a bigger catch available for communities all along the basin, which has declined a lot earlier. And there is ecotourism, which draws extra income for people at some sites. So here the trigger was food security, environmental degradation challenges, how local people solve it, and how governments and CSO are kind of stepping in to upscale it. Other example is from Phayang village in Manipur. So here also a locally led interventions in 1970s to tackle the problem of the stream drying. And what happened is that through the cultural local practices, they stopped extraction from the forest. And 2015, and they were already doing good. And 2015, they received big funding and institutional support from government to expand the governance mechanism for the protection committees of forests, create indigenous knowledge center. And what it has done is that it has made this village a carbon neutral village, and actually getting it a name of first carbon positive settlements of India. So there are forests around the village which are directly managed, protected by the people, and now government is funding to replicate the model to other village settlements. One of the important point here again is that there is this practice of sacred groves, which is a cultural practice of protecting forest, which was used by local community to build motivation of the community to engage in the process. The last example. Now I'm thinking also about a scale. So there are some couple of examples which I shared with you, localized, led by communities. But here is one example from the Bangladesh, which indicates why government policies are actually important in creating some impact at this scale. So Hilsa is like a very important part of economy. Millions of people are getting benefited from this, and it's one of the revered fish in Bangladesh. But its population was declined. It was becoming very costly. And then through, research, government identified, and, CSO communities also, and research communities supported, that there is, the reason is that their breeding sites are not protected. So, and there is, there used to be a cultural ban practices during the breeding season, which is now working anymore. So basically, government established a lot of Hilsa sanctuaries all across the, Meghna and the Ganges River basin in the route where these fish travel, and also started fishing ban. So it's a policy effort to fishing ban, which has led to a threefold increase in the Hilsa population. So what is the key message here? That there are NBS approaches which are applied, and we need to, share and document and share those learning, promoting integration of indigenous knowledge, cost benefit analysis. A lot of speakers today also highlighted that is important for its government uptake. And we saw from these examples that how national government support and policy is an important factor in NBS upscaling and creating a long-lasting impact. So thank you very much. Some resources that you can see, and I hope you liked it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for showing us some really tangible initiatives that could be scaled up. I'm just going to give a reminder to all the audience to answer those poll questions if you can, that are just next to the chat tab. And now we're going to finish up with 3 quick questions. We don't have that much time, so please keep your answers very short. But obviously a key ingredient in driving scale is policy. So coming back to the panelists, let's focus on the current policy and planning landscape for implementing nature-based solutions. Dr. Rahman, what do you think are the opportunities and challenges here from your experience in Bangladesh and more widely?
Thanks, Karina. First, I'd like to highlight, I'd like to say something on the challenges part. I think the major challenge that we experienced in implementing NBS is our policies, like water policy, environment policy, food policy, agriculture policies are highly segmented, and the relevant institutions are also adopting kind of siloed approach. So they have their own priorities, own territorial interests, and their own understanding of their own resource systems. But there we see the lack of understanding of the nexus relationships among different sectors and subsectors. When we talk about NBS implementation and upscaling, we need a kind of integrated approach where different relevant sectors, say for example, if we talk about water, then it relates to food, it relates to fish, biodiversity, agriculture, and also disaster risk reduction need to be integrated. We need to manage it in an integrated way. So that's where a big challenge. Other thing is, well, in that case, I would say that lack of understanding of the NBS and how to go about it. And also there is lack of historical data or the data and information to validate or to assess the effects of NBS. That's a problem. And transboundary, for us, I always like to highlight the transboundary issue of NBS because our fisheries, our water, our health, our food is subject to transboundary approach of river or water management. There I see is more interest among countries of business and trades rather than ecosystems and the resource revitalization of resources. So that's where we need to work collectively, jointly. And other thing is the risk of NBS. For example, if a private party or private sector comes in and saying that, well, this barren area, I'm going to planting trees. But if they do monoculture of trees or the, say, rubber farming, that would be very detrimental and lead to the maladaptation case. So we need to be worried about the risk of adaptation. And in that sense, I like to say that the IUCN's global standard should be strictly followed to design and implement nature-based solutions approach. Some of the opportunities, like it is tested in many countries in Asia and beyond, and there are positive results. from the society and also in terms of the enhancement or improvement of the production systems. Other thing is that now countries are making the NAP, National Adaptation Plan, which is it would be very important document for the countries to follow and address the climate change things and plan adaptation. And this NBS should be embedded adequately in the NAP document, which I feel is important. And there is also opportunities that the global stakeholders, policy stakeholders and planners, they also experts suggesting NBS. So that's also a positive thing at the global level. At the national level, we also have a 5-year perspective plan nationally. So there we should incorporate the NBS, and also this NBS approach should be adopted or embedded in the national disaster management policies. The other thing is important that we should not forget about the local communities, the local knowledge and indigenous knowledge, and the gender equality and social inclusions. That has to be embedded in the planning. I'd like to say that inclusive planning at the local scale, so that their experience, voice, and knowledges are embedded or integrated in the process. So I like to stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to quickly go to the second last question. A fundamental aspect for scaling up is obviously also funding. So I'll throw this out to all the panelists. What are the funding mechanisms available to scale up nature-based solutions for the water sector? I don't know if perhaps Mr. Gutman would like to start.
Okay, I can do that. I guess.
Okay, Dr. Arshad.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I totally agree with Dr. Rahman, because there are few items on his list that very relevantly discusses about the mainstreaming of NBS in policy and planning processes and what are the challenges and opportunities. So I think from my perspective, especially when I talk about the funding, I think financing for these climate smart solutions is a challenge. As the South Asian countries struggle with the financial muscle needed for the implementation. So private sector funding definitely needs to be unlocked through business cases and investments in the natural capital, because this is very important from financing this climate smart solution. And another thing that what we're talking about here in Pakistan as well, because lack of bankability has been one of the primary barriers in upscaling NBS investments, because you see bankable projects, because if we don't have the business cases, we don't have the evidences, so and if we cannot create any business case for any of the nature-based solutions or any bankable solutions, I think it is really hard for us to sell this NBS to the in the financial market. And a third point, in addition to what already had been said, I think adoption of the NBS through government agenda is also a challenge, because the political parties are always skewed towards other investment programs, which has like a short-term result, and they can very clearly say that, okay, within like 2 months' time, within 3 months' time, we have produced this, you can see, and this is used as a political agenda in the upcoming elections. But when we talk about the nature-based solutions, climate solutions, it is always a long-term solution, a long-term impact. So there is a conflict, a bit of a conflict I see, that it is short-term to tangible gains versus like long-term. It has a tangible benefits, but it is a long-term thing. So this is where we always feel a bit of a challenge in this thing. And then similarly, conflicting interest of different stakeholders who are involved in these decision-making processes. So different ministries and different agencies and NGOs are definitely, it's not a hurdle, but it's like stopping you from moving ahead sometimes. And so it's the conflicting interest and overlapping interest that stops them, and working in silos that can also, we can also try to break all of them. And then of course, the integrated approach, where Dr. Rahman already very clearly said that water sector, food sector, DRR sector, sector, health sector, environment sector, they can all talk about in an integrated approach. And there has to be a governance framework. So we talked about in the NBS as one of the criteria that there's a governance improvement. So we need to show here the commitment of all the parties, that how we can improve governance and how we can adopt an integrated approach in order to move this agenda forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Mr. Goodman, would you like to add anything more to that?
Well, I think most of the particular issues have been covered there. I think there is an issue, though, just to pick up on one point, this issue of long-term versus short-term promotion, etc. I think there are evidence. I mean, for example, if you're dealing not so much with water, perhaps with the reduction of landslides, which ADPC has been working on, those interventions are on the same time scale as many of the grey solutions. And I think also the other important part to add to Mr. Ashad's comments is that it's important also to make sure that nature-based solutions is not the silver bullet for everything. There are, as mentioned several times, these mixed grey and green solutions. There are ways of augmenting and enhancing more traditional investment. And I think that needs to be capitalized so people get used to the different new investments that are based on nature-based. And as has said earlier, I think IUCN's standards are important in order to sort of ensure that our initiatives are covering a number of points. I think that's a very useful tool, but it needs to be adopted flexibly, I think, because we're too rigid, then it becomes a constraint. Thank you. I stop there in the interest of time to have some other questions.
Thank you so much. We've got one more question, which is basically on the private sector and what role this important puzzle piece can play in scaling up nature-based solutions. I'll just give my own thoughts as a private sector representative. And there definitely there is definitely a need for more private sector financing. I think a UNEP report had said that $536 billion is needed annually by 2050 to meet climate, biodiversity, and land degradation targets, but only 133 billion is currently flowing into nature-based solutions annually. And of this, just 14% stems from private capital. And obviously, we're speaking to a lot of impact investors, development finance institutions, and we're seeing that they really want to invest in adaptation, but they're seeing that it's largely non-revenue generating. So I think Dr. Ashad mentioned this point. We do need to understand how to generate revenue as much as possible from these solutions. Could it be ecotourism fees? Could it be sustainable fishing revenue, carbon credits, and then trying to see how to channel those to the private sector and maybe leaving the non-revenue generating projects to the public sector, or perhaps bundling those together. We've also maybe could look at insurance, trying to unlock financing by reducing the risk and therefore reducing premium, and then kind of funneling that saved premium cost to investing in more adaptation. And I think we also need to look at different mechanisms like blended finance, which I think can be really catalytic. So you can have a little bit of a guarantee from a public development bank that suddenly makes the whole project much more secure for the private sector to then come in and really put in a lot of money, which they really have the financing and they are motivated. They just need some standards of return and safety to be able to contribute. I'm going to wrap it up there and open the floor to questions from the audience. So we'll have a chance to get to bring in your varied and rich experience. Dr. Gupta, I'll hand this over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Karina.
Just wanted to say one small thing before Dr. Gupta takes over. So it's also an opportunity recently. This is a Dutch Fund for Climate and Development, DFCD. So I think this is also an opportunity for all of us to get benefit out of this. Because in Pakistan, especially in WWF Pakistan, we have facilitated like 3 or 4 different projects right now, and they are in the 3rd stage at the moment. And I think there's a lot of investment that is coming in from the DFCD into Pakistan from bankable projects. So I think we also need to create a solutions, to create co-solutions, and as a result of that, they have actually done the feasibilities and pre-feasibilities out of this. And I think they have been able to develop that evidence. And I think this is the key. So if you develop the evidence, if you develop a case study or a business case, I think then there's no point that it can be stopped anywhere. So if you have the will, if you can do, if you have a very right project and where you can spend your time and efforts and everything, I think there's no point that your project can't go further. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Arshad. Thank you, Karina. I think there were a number of interesting questions from the audience. There are 6 to 7 questions came, but because in interest of time, we will just take 2 questions, and it's open to all the panelists or the speakers. So one question is about NBS is gaining momentum, especially after the late 2000s. There has always been this solution, just maybe not termed as NBS. So in this setting, are there any ongoing initiatives that are looking at research studies and case studies on these solutions pre-2000 to gain more evidence? So question is open to any of the panelists or the speakers.
Yes,
So,
this is Mokles from Bangladesh.
Yeah, please.
Actually, our organization, we started functioning since 1994. And our first project was ecosystem restoration. And idea was that, due to siltations and degradations, the connectivity between wetlands and river systems were disrupted. So we wanted to desilt or rehabilitate the connecting canals to allow waters to come in the early monsoon. And that would bring the fish eggs, juveniles, adults to the floodplain to use as a nursery and growing and breeding habitats. And that is, we actually, at that time in Bangladesh, the World Bank and DFID was and ADB also funding for stocking of hatchery produced fingerlings to the floodplains, and we criticized that. So what we demonstrated with small fund from Ford Foundation in 1994 in the central part of Bangladesh, in a small place. And we have found, we engaged or trained the local communities to monitor fish catch and fish consumption. And in 2 years, we have got 6 times higher the fish production in the floodplains and increased fish consumptions. We were discouraged by many people. They discouraged our ideas. Finally, Ford Foundation, they were convinced. And later on, the USAID designed a big project called MACH, Management of Aquatic Ecosystems through Community Husbandry. And they actually hired us to design their projects. And gradually, UNDP also developed Sustainable Environment Management projects. And also they said that we need your approach. So, before pre-2020, pre-2000, we actually the first demonstrated the nature-based approaches in the floodplain fisheries management. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I think we have just 2 minutes left. So the World Water Week platform is already open and all the participants are registered. So I think they can interact amongst themselves through the send message button beside the name of the person. If you click name of Dr. Mokuleshwar Rahman and send message, it will go to his email and he can reply on a similar manner. So over to Karina to make a brief conclusion of this session. Thank you.
Sure. Sorry for being so quick on the audience participation. So we've had an incredibly rich session. I'd like to thank all the panelists and the presenters and audience for contributing to this very valuable learning experience. There's been lots of takeaway messages, but I'll just focus on the key points. Nature-based solutions like forest restoration, wetland, mangrove restoration, etc., should be prioritized over grey alternatives or used in a mix if possible, given the multiple benefits: biodiversity, carbon mitigation, local job creation, but of course the powerful defense against climate change impacts in the water sector, which is becoming increasingly proven. They're cheaper, more flexible than grey, which can't be adjusted to the changing climate. Nature can also make grey last longer and is more effective sometimes in reducing climate risk. We should be quantifying all of these benefits through cost-benefit analyses, and it's a powerful way to sensitize donors and other institutions and investments and make the case. We've heard today that South Asia is suffering from drying up deltas, shifting rivers, transitions to aquaculture, which is having a major impact on water stress and populations. While there have been some success stories in sustainable fishing through sanctuary setups, forest restoration, there's a significant need to really enhance the institutional capacity in implementing and scaling these up. So the success stories mentioned really being carried by local governments and civil society. So we really need strong policy and planning and national government support to be a key driver. We heard you need to embed nature-based solutions and local knowledge in the national adaptation plans, in government 5-year plans and environmental policies. We need to fill knowledge gaps and raise awareness so that everyone knows actually how nature-based solutions work and can be implemented and scale them up, and ensure Indigenous knowledge is integrated into the design. And we also need the private sector to play a role if we really want to reach scale, to get bankable projects in the pipeline. We need to commercialize the multiple benefits of nature-based solutions, build, and I think Dr. Ashad said, you know, if you build the business case, the investment is there and it'll come. So South Asia and the rest of the world is facing a very volatile future with climate change. But I think if we can make the stars of policy, capacity, collaboration, we've heard the transboundary issue is absolutely pertinent in governance frameworks. If we can get all of that and obviously financing to align, then maybe we can use nature to be better protected for what's to come. So a big thank you to all of you here today, and good luck for the rest of the World Water Week sessions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Karina.
Thank you very much.
so
Thank you,
much.
Karina.
Thanks a lot.
It was really great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, everyone.
Bye-bye.
And bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Bye.